They say silence is golden, but in my house, silence was a weapon. My father never needed to raise his voice. His disinterest cut sharper than any insult ever could. I remember it so clearly. That Father's Day when I was 13, I had spent the whole afternoon crafting a card, hand-cut edges, pressed gold stars, a short poem in the center I rewrote 6 times. It was my best work, my offering. After dinner, I walked up to him, heart pounding, and held it out. He didn't even look up from the TV, just muttered, "Thanks." Not even thanks, Sloan. Just thanks. I stood there, card still in hand, while the game played on. Not even a glance. 5 minutes later, my brother Ethan strolled in. He tossed Dad a plastic mug. Still had the price sticker on it. It said, "Number 1 DAD" in bright red font. Dad laughed, stood up, clapped Ethan on the back. "Now this is a gift." Everyone laughed with him. I was still standing in the same spot. No one noticed. Back then, I thought maybe if I talked less, smiled more, tried harder, he'd finally see me. But it didn't matter what I did. I was always invisible. At school, I brought home straight A's. Ethan passed a single science test, and there was a celebratory dinner. No one said a word about my perfect GPA. At the dinner table, Dad would ask my brothers about everything: football scores, math competitions, even the weather. Me? I could have vanished into thin air, and no one would have paused their conversation. I remember once, during one of those picture-perfect family meals, I tried to chime in. Dad cut across me mid-sentence. "Sloan, sweetie, can you pass the salt?" Just that, a smile. Dismissal dressed as kindness. But the moment that branded itself into my memory, one night, after a school art competition, I had won first place statewide. Statewide. I came home holding the ribbon, excited, nervous. Dad looked up from his newspaper. "Nice," he said, then turned to Noah, my younger brother. "You got soccer practice tomorrow, right, champ?" That was it. The ribbon stayed folded in my backpack. I never took it out again. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, asking myself the same question I had asked so many times before. Why am I never enough? But somewhere deep inside that ache, a seed was planted. Not sadness, something sharper, something colder. Not yet a plan, but the beginning of knowing. One day, he would remember me. Not as the quiet one, not as the background daughter, but as the woman who would change everything. I knew then that effort meant nothing. If you were born invisible. Every dinner felt like a stage, and I wasn't cast. They had roles. Ethan, the charming eldest, always with a new venture idea. Noah, the golden athlete, fresh off another win. My father? He was the proud director. And me? I was the girl clearing plates between acts. By college, I had learned to dim myself. My internship at a prestigious tech incubator? That's nice, Dad said between bites of toast. My scholarship? Forgotten within the hour. The only applause I got was in my own silence. Once, I won a regional coding challenge, beat out over 300 competitors. I brought home the certificate, still warm from the printer. Dad didn't even look at it. He was on the phone with Ethan. 5,000 downloads already? He said, grinning. Now that's impressive. I quietly folded the certificate in half, tucked it into a drawer. And that night, I realized something cruel. I was the pause between their conversations, the space filler. But the moment that hit hardest, it was so small, so stupid. We were taking a family photo. It was one of those everyone wear navy blue kinds of pictures, posed, perfect, artificial. I stood between Ethan and Noah, hands awkward at my sides. My mother tried to fix my hair. Dad said, "Don't worry about it." She's just the artsy one. Laughter. Snap. Photo taken. Weeks later, I saw the framed version on the hallway wall. My face was barely visible. Cropped. Out of frame. I didn't say anything. Didn't ask why, but I kept a copy of the original, the uncropped one, and taped it inside my desk drawer. A reminder. Not of them, of me. Because even if I didn't exist on their walls, I would exist somewhere else. And one day, they would have no choice but to see me. They edited me out of the frame, so I started designing my own. It was supposed to be my moment. Father's Day again. Same backyard, same folding chairs on the lawn, same crown on my father's head. Invisible, but heavy. I'd spent weeks preparing. My small startup, a digital UX service platform, had just gone live. We had our first paid client. I was exhausted, proud, hopeful. I had something real to share. Dinner was grilled steak, corn on the cob, cold beers, the usual. Noah was bragging about scoring a brand deal from a local athletic wear company. Ethan was pitching some recycled business idea about organic coffee that I had heard 3 times already. Dad loved it. "Now, that's initiative," he boomed. Everyone clapped. I waited. I cleared my throat. "Actually, I just launched." Dad raised a hand, not rudely, just habitually. "Hold on, sweetie," he said, turning to Noah. "So about that sponsorship, what did the rep say again?" And just like that, my voice evaporated, like I was never speaking. I didn't try again. I just stared down at my plate, watching the condensation bead off my lemonade. The laughter rolled on without me. When it was over, people hugged goodbye. Dad kissed my cheek. "Keep being you, kid," he said. I smiled tightly. Inside, something cracked. Back in my apartment, the silence was too much. I didn't turn on music, didn't open my laptop, just sat in the dark, staring at the blank screen of my phone. The family group chat pinged with a photo from dinner. Everyone smiling, holding up glasses. I wasn't even centered in the shot. I deleted the thread, blocked notifications, then opened my browser. I bought a new domain that night, used my middle name, registered it under an LLC. The logo? Just a single dot. Small, quiet, precise. Because I didn't need noise. I needed focus. I whispered the words aloud in the dark. Never again. That night, I bought more than a domain. I bought my way out. Absence is only noticed when presence once mattered. But in my case, no one even asked. The next family event came and went. No texts, no guilt trips, no passive-aggressive, "You okay?" from Mom. Just silence. So I matched it. I stopped replying. I stopped showing up. Birthday parties, holiday dinners, all the scripted gatherings where everyone played their part. I erased myself from the stage. Instead, I stayed home, alone, and buried myself in code. My startup became my sanctuary. A small desk, 2 monitors, 1 chair, 3 post-its on the wall with one goal each. Stability. Independence. Legacy. I changed my last name, took my mother's maiden name, called her. Quiet strength. Unnoticed lineage. I filed the paperwork myself, didn't tell anyone. When the confirmation came in the mail, I held the paper like a certificate of rebirth. Not a Sloan Mercer anymore. Just Sloan. Some nights, I'd scroll through their photos. Ethan in a new suit. Noah holding another trophy. Dad beaming in every frame. I used to wonder what it would feel like to be in one of those smiles. Now? I didn't need it. I had something better. Clients started rolling in. Slowly, but steady. People who had been ignored by bigger firms. Mothers trying to launch online shops. Veterans needing accessible UI. I listened, built, delivered. One woman cried after I redesigned her nonprofit site. "You're the first one who actually heard me," she said. That sentence meant more than any "I'm proud of you" I ever begged for. Then came a message from a VC associate, small fund looking for scalable niche tech. I took the call using only my initials. S. Calder. He liked the pitch, asked about my goals. I told him the truth. I want to build something that doesn't apologize for existing. He paused, then said, I think we can work with that. We signed the next week. It wasn't a huge check, but it was mine. And with it, I made my first real hire. A front-end dev from New Mexico. Another woman who said, no one took me seriously until now. I smiled. I know the feeling. She didn't ask where I went. She asked where we're going next. The sound of my own keyboard became my lullaby. Click, click, click. That was all I heard, night after night, while the rest of the world seemed to sleep in comfort, in certainty, in connection. Some nights, I worked until my eyes blurred. Other nights, I didn't eat at all, just toast and whatever instant coffee I could stretch into the next morning. There was no one to cheer me on, no one to say, you're doing great, Sloan. But I kept going. Because in that silence, I was finally building something that belonged to me. I didn't post updates, didn't send Christmas emails, didn't text when I launched version 2.0 of the platform. Let them assume I was still drifting, still the quiet daughter. Still the artsy one. That's how I wanted it, because every time I sat at that desk, hungry, tired, sore, I was forging something harder than steel. I was forging a life without their approval. I started bringing on contractors. People like me. People who had been told, you're not enough, one too many times. We worked odd hours. We made mistakes. But we listened. We delivered. We built. One late night, after pushing a major deployment, my lead designer sent me a message. Never had a boss who trusted me like this. Thank you. I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed, you're not the only one who's been underestimated. But for all that strength, there were moments. Moments where I scrolled too far and saw their perfect little world. Ethan at some tech panel with Dad on the sidelines. Noah holding another golden plaque. My father, grinning with pride like he'd raised champions. And I'd feel it again. That sting. That ache of being forgotten by the one person whose voice I once craved most. But I never messaged him. Instead, I refocused, wrote better code, learned to pitch, learned to handle rejection. I grew in the dark. And then it happened. A small investor, niche fund, reached out after reading a quiet blog I posted about accessibility in fintech. We met on Zoom. He liked the model, asked for numbers. I gave them. And after 2 weeks of negotiation, he wired the seed money. I stared at the bank screen. The numbers didn't change my soul, but they validated the scars I had hidden for years. That same week, I signed a lease, my first office. Nothing fancy, but it had windows, floor to ceiling. I stood there that first morning, coffee in hand, watching the light pour in. No dad, no applause, just me and everything I had earned. I signed the paperwork under the name S. Calder. He'd never recognize it, but soon he would. The day I bought a building, I didn't tell a soul. Not because I wasn't proud, but because the moment didn't belong to anyone but me. The lease was short, 12 months with an option to buy. Small team, shared desks, one espresso machine that sputtered when overworked. But the windows, they stretched from floor to ceiling. Sunlight poured in like proof that I had finally arrived somewhere I built with my own 2 hands. We scaled quickly. Referrals, press blurbs. A review in a mid-tier tech journal called us the Quiet Disruptors. I printed that quote, framed it, put it in the lobby, and I kept working. Early mornings, late nights, no shortcuts, no co-founders, no family investors, Every decision had my fingerprints on it, and every line of code came from survival. I had stopped asking for permission a long time ago, but now I was done even asking for space. I took it. One night, I stood alone in the office. The city hummed outside the glass. I turned off the lights, watched my reflection settle into the dark pane, hair tied back, hoodie zipped, shoulders square. I didn't look like a CEO, but I looked like someone who didn't need anyone to tell her she'd made it. That's when the call came. A friend from my grad school days, now working in mid-market M&A, left a voice memo. "Hey Sloan, weird news. Mercer Corp might be looking to restructure. Quiet rumors. Something about needing new equity to stay liquid." I paused the recording. Mercer Corporation, his company. My father's name was on the building, on every quarterly report, on every letterhead, and now it was bleeding. I didn't react, didn't gloat. I just stared at the window, at my reflection, and said aloud, "I think it's time." I made one phone call to a corporate lawyer I trusted, gave her my numbers, my entity name, my offer structure. "All anonymous," I said, "through shell corporations, no noise." She replied, "Understood." The paperwork began to move, quietly, legally, perfectly, like I'd always planned it. I never said I wanted revenge, but I wasn't going to miss my chance to reclaim what had been taken from me, not with violence, but with precision. The acquisition would finalize on June 17th, Father's Day. He used to say I'd never finish anything, so I finished the one thing that would finish him. By early June, the acquisition documents were finalized. Mercer Corp, the family jewel, was now mine. Not under my name, of course, under S. Calder Holdings, layered through quiet entities and airtight NDAs. Even the board didn't see it coming. The deal was structured clean, elegant, undeniable. I remember sitting in my office the day it was finalized. Everyone else had gone home. The city below me blinked with lights and late-night ambition. I stared at the closing email, took a breath, and whispered, "You never saw me. Now you'll have to answer to me." My father's name would still hang in the Mercer Corp lobby, but the power behind the curtain? Mine. I didn't feel giddy. I didn't cry. It wasn't revenge in the way movies show it. It was colder, sharper, a reclamation. The next day, I bought a car, a sleek Obsidian Bentley, registered it under my legal name. Not Sloan Mercer, not Daddy's girl, just Sloan Calder. I told no one, but I had already RSVP'd for the Father's Day dinner. The same backyard, the same long table, the same lawn chairs like plastic thrones. I hadn't been there in years, not for birthdays, not for holidays, not even when Mom had her knee surgery. No one noticed. No one asked. That's the thing about being forgotten. Eventually, your absence stops echoing. But this year, I was coming back. Not for closure, not for peace, but to deliver the one thing they never gave me: acknowledgement. I stood in front of the mirror the night before. My reflection was calm, hair smooth, black dress clean-cut, quiet elegance. The car keys rested on the counter, next to a graphite envelope. Inside it, the full transfer of controlling interest in Mercer Corporation. It wasn't just a document. It was the sum of every dismissal, every shrug, every time he turned the TV up when I spoke. I placed the envelope in my bag, slid the keys into my coat pocket. Tomorrow, they'd finally see me. The deal was closed. The name was hidden. The date was set. Father's Day was mine now. The engine purred like a threat. As I pulled into the Mercer driveway, sleek black Bentley gleaming in the late afternoon sun, I felt every head turn from the patio. Ethan's beer bottle froze midair. Noah's laugh caught in his throat. And my father. He squinted, then smiled. "Well, Look who finally decided to show up. The table was dressed with the usual flair: grilled ribs, chilled wine, napkins folded into triangles, a perfect suburban stage. I stepped out slowly. My heels clicked on the stone path like a clock counting down. "Hi, everyone," I said, calm. "Happy Father's Day, Dad." He raised his glass. "Glad you remembered us this year." I sat at the far end of the table. No one offered to scoot closer. That was fine. Ethan was talking about a new venture into crypto. Noah bragged about his latest marathon medal. My father was beaming, just like always. "You boys make me proud," he said. "Real leaders." He glanced at me briefly, then raised his brow. "And Sloan, what have you been up to these days? Still freelancing?" Laughter. Forks clinked. I smiled, then stood. "I brought you something," I said. Everyone turned. I walked back toward the driveway, opened the passenger door, took out the graphite envelope, held it like a sacred artifact, and returned. My footsteps slow, measured. I placed the envelope in front of him, alongside the Bentley key fob. "For you, Dad. Happy Father's Day." He chuckled. "Is this a joke?" He picked up the keys. "Whose car is that?" I didn't answer. "Open the envelope," I said. He peeled the flap, unfolded the document. His eyes scanned, then stopped, then darted back up. "What is this?" I stayed silent. Ethan leaned over. "What's going on?" Noah frowned. "Wait, is this legal?" My father's voice changed, low, flat. "This says Mercer Corp. was acquired." He paused. "By S. Calder Holdings." He looked up, confused, panicked. I smiled. "That's me." The air snapped. You bought?" "I own controlling interest. As of this morning, the board's been informed. You'll get the call on Monday." Noah stood up. "You're kidding. You're joking, right?" Ethan grabbed the paper. "Dad, tell me this isn't real." "But my father..." He just stared at me, hands trembling. I leaned in slightly, my voice low. "No more side comments. No more shrinking me out of photos. No more pretending I don't exist." I looked at each of them. "Now, you answer to me." I turned, walked out, got in the Bentley. The door closed with a whisper. The engine ignited, and as I pulled away, I heard it, my father's voice, yelling, but not in anger, in fear. He used to run the family. Now, he couldn't even run the conversation. I didn't look back. The house behind me, so full of noise, pride, and blindness, disappeared in the rearview mirror. But in my mind, I could see it. The table, the silence, the unraveling. Inside, my father still held the graphite envelope in his hands. His fingers white-knuckled, eyes scanning like, maybe, just maybe. It was all a mistake. It wasn't. Ethan was the first to speak. "Dad, what is she talking about?" My father didn't answer. He just stared at the document, mouth open, speechless. Noah stepped closer. Wait, is this for real? This can't be real." Ethan grabbed the envelope, flipped through it. "There's legal language in here. Controlling shares, full transfer of authority. What the hell is this?" And then, for the first time in my lifetime, my father's voice cracked. "She owns it," he muttered. No one moved. He looked up, face pale. "She owns the company. She owns the building. She owns everything." The words dropped like concrete. You could feel the air collapse. Noah sat down hard, like his knees gave out. "You're saying, Sloan, she's our boss now?" Ethan shook his head. "This is a joke. This has to be a setup, right?" My father didn't answer. He just rubbed his temples, like maybe if he pressed hard enough, he could undo it. "Dad," Ethan said again, voice rising. "How the hell did she even do this?" Dad looked up slowly. "She didn't ask," he said. She didn't wait. She didn't need us. Noah's jaw clenched. But she's the quiet one. The one who never finished anything? The one who... My father's voice cut in. Low. Final. She finished everything. There was a long, terrible pause. The kind that reshapes families. Back in my apartment, I poured a glass of water. Watched the ice float. My phone buzzed. Missed calls, messages, voicemails. I didn't answer, because I didn't owe them anything, not anymore. I opened my laptop. The Mercer Corp dashboard glowed. Access granted. Full control. For a second, I just stared at the screen. Then I hit execute. Restructure phase initiated. Departmental review scheduled. Board briefing preloaded. I was no longer the one waiting for a seat at their table. I had built my own. He spent his life building a legacy and gave it away the moment he ignored me. I used to flinch when I passed mirrors, not out of shame, out of habit. I was so used to being unseen that eventually I stopped seeing myself too. But that night, after everything was signed, said, and shattered, I stood in front of my full-length mirror. No makeup, hair loose, hoodie on. Just me, raw, undiluted, and for the first time, I didn't look away. I looked like someone who had clawed her way out of invisibility. Someone who didn't need applause, or permission, or a seat at anyone's table. I was the table now. The graphite envelope sat on my desk, empty, its weight long transferred to them, and beside it, a framed photo. Not of my family, not of the dinner, not of the car. Just me, in my office, at sunrise, backlit, strong, present. I didn't need their name. I had built my own. The messages kept coming. Ethan, Noah, even my mother. Can we talk? This is all a misunderstanding. Dad's not doing well. You've made your point. But I didn't respond, because it was never about making a point. It was about making peace with myself. That night, I opened my contacts list, found his name. Dad. Paused, then tapped. Delete, no hesitation, just release. Outside, the city pulsed, alive, unaware of the small war I had just ended. Or maybe, one. I turned off the lights, let the moonlight fill the room, and whispered to my reflection, you were always enough. And the mirror? It didn't argue. It didn't deflect. It didn't look away. It just reflected. Finally. Some daughters inherit silence, others turn it into power. Sometimes the loudest kind of healing is the one no one hears. We're often taught that love means staying loyal, staying quiet, staying small enough to fit the version of ourselves that others are willing to see. But there comes a point when silence stops being peace and starts becoming erasure. And that's when you face a choice. Continue shrinking, or walk away and build a life where you no longer have to ask for space. The truth is, some doors don't slam shut. They close gently, while everyone pretends not to notice you're gone. And that's the part no one prepares you for. How hard it is to grieve people who never really saw you, and how liberating it can be to stop waiting for their recognition. Reclaiming yourself doesn't always look like triumph. Sometimes it looks like working through the night, like deleting a contact, like learning to speak kindly to the mirror. It's quiet, uncelebrated, but it's yours. You don't owe anyone your dimness just to make them comfortable in their spotlight. You owe yourself the chance to exist, fully, unapologetically, and on your own terms, because in the end, power isn't about being seen by them. It's about seeing yourself clearly enough to never disappear again. And once you've built a life that needs no permission, even your silence becomes unforgettable. Thank you for spending this time with Sloane's story. If any part of it echoed something in your own life, the silence, the dismissal, the quiet climb back to yourself, just know you're not alone. Truly, there's something powerful about being seen, even in a story. And if this one made you feel a little more understood, I hope you'll share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If you'd like more stories like this, stories about quiet strength, self-worth, and the kind of courage that doesn't need a spotlight, feel free to like, share, or subscribe. Only if it feels right to you. Until next time, take care of the parts of you the world once overlooked. They were never small, just waiting to rise.